All right, welcome to the Shadow Tech Alchemy biweekly broadcast. This is May 21st, 2022. I'm Colin Davis.
And I'm Melissa Mari.
And we have Melissa Mari with us. And today, this broadcast is called Your Disease is a Mind Virus. And this is one, we really only probably have about 5 things we ever talk about, and we just kind of talk about them in a slightly different way and come from a little bit different angle, because this is kind of the program, and this is a big part of the program. And so I got some notes here, and I think what we're going to do, Melissa helped me to write down all these notes before we started here. So I'll say a few things, and then I'll invite Melissa to comment, and then I'll add to what she's saying. So when I say your disease is a mind virus, when I say disease, I also mean your symptoms, your physical symptoms, your syndromes, your disabilities, anything like this. This is all, these are all synonyms for each other. And when I say it's a mind virus, I'm not actually saying that there is not a physical component. I'm not saying there's not a genetic component, because sometimes both of these, either of these or both of these can exist, or which is a hereditary component. But I'm saying that if you are suffering from some kind of symptom, some kind of physical ailment, disease, symptom, syndrome, etc., the symptom is being made real through mental scripting, which is running in the background that you probably have not become very conscious of. And so without the mental scripting, or if the mental scripting would become different and contradict the state of disease, then the body would start to respond differently, and you would start to move out of that state of disease. The state of disease or the syndrome is completely dependent on the mental scripting which is behind it. And so you could call that mental scripting a mind virus, malware. So in psychological terms, we're talking about the influence of a complex. So there's a phrase that we've used for a long time, and that is that the virus gets you where you're weak. And so wherever you are weak physically, genetically, mentally, emotionally, as anywhere in the psyche, that's where the virus, which is sort of a generic term that we use for the dark side of reality, or for, let's say, sort of a synonym for the devil, right? It's the destructive force in the universe. The destructive force in the universe is always moving, and it is always challenging every living system, every system. And so the destructive force in the universe will find you where you're weak. So when we're talking about your physical symptoms, your disease, these are areas where some part of you has a fracture, a weakness, a discordance, an imbalance. Wherever you're imbalanced, that's where you're going to be attacked. That's where your symptom, your syndrome, your disease is going to show up. And you're going to find that imbalance is not only physical, but it has mental scripting around it. This is a mind virus. And when your last thing here is that when your mental scripting, or excuse me, when your symptoms are chronic, meaning they are cycling and they're coming and going over periods of days, weeks, or years, or decades. In other words, I used to not have back problems, now I have back problems. Or my back problems are really bad this month, but last month they weren't so bad. This is chronic. It means this is cycling. And that's your first, or in that example with chronic disease, which is rampant right now, chronic disease can be completely mental and have no physical link to it at all. A lot of the times there will be something physical that will trigger a mind virus that will start to cycle around that triggering event. You bumped your elbow and then it turned into something bigger than it should be. But that's just the excuse. That's just the false flag event. Okay, so do you want to say anything to what I said there? That was sort of the introduction, and then I want to go into
No, that's good.
That's good? You don't want to have it add anything to that? I'm sure you have some.
Because I was going to I thought that perhaps we could zoom out to the culture and discuss why right now it's important to be able to start to really put our minds around this concept of psychospiritual
right.
Mind viruses and TMS, as we call it, as John Sarno developed.
Right, and that's sort of we would suggest that people look at John E. Sarno and his books to get into this matter more deeply.
Yeah, so that's what I was suggesting, is to talk about it from the whole on of the culture first, and why we feel it's so important to understand this. You know, a lot of people have been quote unquote red pilled in the last 2 years with the whole COVID phenomenon virus. And now we're seeing, this is May 21st, 2022, and we're seeing now there's a whole new monkeypox or smallpox event that's starting to get spread into the public's mind sphere.
A new cultural meme that can become a mind virus.
Right.
And this is where I had this down, I think, in the list here. But we can. It was number 4, but you can bring that up right now.
I thought it'd be to look at the outer picture of why we feel this is so important to understand at this time in our history as humans, with all this technology. And all this input in every way, to really start to take more responsibility for our own body, mind, psychospiritual field, so that we can not just survive, that's number one, survive through these times, but thrive through these times.
Yeah, let's go to my notes on that. So basically you have a situation where, and I wrote it right here, where this is where the people that we're talking to are, to a great degree, people who consider themselves red-pilled. They're people who have already awakened to the reality of the sort of concocted narratives of the status quo. and mainstream thought. And the way you could just say fake news in general, in the most broadest way of thinking about that. How that, so that's sort of the red pill awakening, is to recognize the subjective nature of culture and of reality, and how that much of what we're intaking, that we accept as history, as real, as news, is actually propaganda and concocted and created. And so in this way, you have idea complexes, memes, and this is the Richard Dawkins definition of the meme. You have an idea complex, and the idea complex is basically broadcast broadly through the culture, and then people take that idea on as real, as reality, and then that idea has implications for everybody differently. Some people are going to look at some news about some event, and they're going to react in it one way. Other people are going to react to things in another way. And people are going to react self-destructively to the degree that that broadcast is triggering something in themselves where they are weak, triggering an existing complex, triggering an existing phobia, triggering an existing fear, okay? And so this is why when you have something like a pandemic, it is universally toxic to people. Is, you know, if it's fake news, if it's a concocted narrative, it's universally toxic to people. All people can be susceptible to this because it goes to the most basic survival mechanism in every human being. So if you were already aware, if you're red-pilled and you're already aware of this sort of concoctive narrative structure in culture, now you can go to the next level and you can recognize, okay, well, what memes or idea complexes have I taken in, am I susceptible to, and that what are they doing to me? So in the case of the COVID-19 one, people were taking that on, and many people were saying, oh no, this is going to get me. I don't have a strong immune system. They believed they didn't have a strong immune system, and then they would allow the idea to start to proliferate within them, and then it became a little micro complex, a phobia that started to run, and then they would be susceptible to whatever virus was out there. When people say they come down with symptoms or this, that, and the other, you have no idea what disease or what virus it is that's causing this, because you've always got coronaviruses sitting up in your nose. You're always full of all kinds of viruses. So you don't know, and we don't even know with the whole COVID thing, with the testing, if the testing is accurate or what's going on with that.
Well, we already know that.
In fact, we know that the way they've even explained, they've admitted that they're setting the PCR machine to be overly sensitive, and so it's picking up all kinds of junk.
Right.
So basically, we have people who are getting symptoms because they believe that they have contracted this scary disease that everyone's telling them is out there and scary. They don't know that that's the case. They just know that they're feeling sick. So this is how it works. Now, this isn't to say that there isn't some kind of, it's called SARS-CoV-2 virus floating around, and these things, are in the air or whatever. I don't know if they, to the degree in which that they can survive in the air, but let's say that there is some virus, some actual biological virus that's moving about, means nothing. Basically, it does not, because it's around, because you've got it in your nose, doesn't mean at all that you're going to catch any symptoms. In fact, most people never got any symptoms. Most people that tested positive are asymptomatic. So this explanation, using this example, takes us where we need to go. Is that the trigger doesn't necessarily result in a destructive response unless you already have a propensity to accept that trigger. Are you susceptible? In the same way that some people are susceptible to this virus and other people are not susceptible to such and such virus. It's the same thing going for a mind virus. Some people are susceptible. Some people will develop symptoms when they hear about the news. Some people will not develop symptoms when they hear about the news. It all depends on where you're weak. Mm-hmm. And so this is where we get back into using this understanding as a personal, this is a personal health regimen of the psyche, to be able to, in the same way that you take care of your sanitation, your hygiene practices, sewage technology, and all the stuff that you use to keep yourself clean from environmental toxins and pathogens. You have to have some kind of method, you have to have some kind of program for keeping yourself clean or keeping yourself strong in the face of all of these destructive idea complexes. These all this shadow malware of the culture, which then becomes shadow complexes of the personal psyche. And when you start to investigate your own complexes and your own phobias and your own destructive scripting, you will find the scripting that is keeping your symptoms going, that is keeping all of your different physical ailments and symptoms going. There's mental scripting behind it. This is the trigger that keeps the symptom going, and you have to study your inner scripting to be able to discover this. It's not a big deal, but you just have to do it. So I'm going to go through these, and then you can comment on all these, Melissa. So the first thing, when we're talking about physical symptoms, and let's say it's back pain, let's say it's skin disorders, let's say, can you think of some
headaches?
Okay, go ahead. Think of some things.
Digestive complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Inflammation.
Mm-hmm. All kinds of issues, right?
Everything.
Everything.
I've come to the conclusion in my own healing journey that everything is based on spiritual, emotional, epigenetic, trauma, that everything is psychosomatic. That's my own ongoing theory.
Yeah, all your symptoms are psychosomatic.
Yes.
They have a mental or psychic root.
Yes.
And even if you could say, well, my mother had this same problem, and you would tend to say, well, it's genetic.
Like your eyes.
My eye issues were not actually in my family.
Right, but I'm saying even your eyes.
Yeah, by developing an eye condition or multiple eye conditions when I was 3 years old or whatever, could easily have just been the effects of the trauma that were going on in my life around that time.
Right.
So but when you have a situation where you see that you have a similar or the same symptom that your father or mother or grandmother or grandfather had, and you would tend to say, well, this is genetic, it's better to recognize that it's epigenetic. In other words, it might turn into a physical symptom, it might not. Notice how one sibling will develop some symptom, some disease, some issue, some ailment that a parent had, but the other sibling won't. So this is where the idea of epigenetics comes in. The code might be present, but the fact that the code is expressed is not necessarily guaranteed. And so there is a mental component, and if you study it, you'll find that the sibling who is expressing the disease is identifying with it and is accepting it as real. So the first thing on this list is that you have to, in order to start to break this down and get into this and start to free yourself of this, you have to, one, allow discomfort, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, what does that mean?
You have to allow yourself to experience and feel the pain of what it is, and accept that even if you can't fully grasp it and say, this is true for me, if you use it as an experiment, you can even pretend to give your mind the option that this is a self-created discomfort. It's not from anything external. It's not genetic.
Right.
It is your own system talking to you, communicating to you.
Right. So that's the very first thing, basically. Consider the option that your symptom or symptoms, whatever they are completely self-created, and that you created them, some unconscious part of you created them, and therefore some part of you, conscious or unconscious, can relieve them. And this is where John Sarno says that perhaps only 15% of the population can accept a psychosomatic diagnosis for their symptom.
Right.
How many people can really say, okay, I could fully accept that perhaps my symptom is completely a creation of my own mind, and that there is some mental scripting that is getting my body involved in this. Mm-hmm. You first have to get past that hurdle. So if you get past that hurdle, and Sarno's number is correct, and we think it probably is, 85% of your friends, family, colleagues, they will not be able to go along with you on this.
Yeah, when you start talking to other people in this way, they just...
they will not be able to go with you because of the amount of responsibility that comes with this, with the acceptance that your pain, your symptom, your disease is psychosomatic or mind created. And so you have to be able to say that's possible, even if at first you don't say this is definitely the case. You have to say it's possible. I accept that possibility.
And this is really true rebellion, because everything in your outer world is telling you immediately when you feel discomfort, go to your doctor, right? Go to a hospital, go to the doctor, go get a drug. Or even if you're into natural health, go get some sort of an alternative healing method.
Somebody or someone or something can heal me. There must be something or someone out there.
It's always out there.
Always out there.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that...
Someone save me.
Yes. That's immediately...
Someone save me.
And who is saying that? you have to ask yourself,
But what part of you is saying,
what
save me?
part of you is saying, someone, something out there, save me?
Yeah, I wrote trace it down. So you have to trace down the scripting around the complex that keeps it alive, that keeps it real. Something is saying there is a child part of us that is, I mean, it's only natural, because when you are a child, you are completely dependent upon the parents and upon your community to
Right.
fix situations that you cannot problem solve out of. You don't have the mental capacity to do that when you're 6 years old. So going to a default that there's someone out there who knows more than I do, someone who's more experienced, studied, smarter, whatever, that's out there that can heal me, that's a natural, instinctive response that everyone would think, because it comes from our experience.
It's also
nothing wrong with
culturally in our genes, because before Western medicine, there was the shaman or the medicine person in
Yeah.
a tribe
Yeah.
who would be that person that if somebody had discomfort or some issue, they would go and seek that person out. So
Yeah, whether it's a parent, the parent is sort of the default external problem solver, and then one step up from that, it would be the shaman, the doctor, the priest, and this is normal, and there's nothing wrong with the fact that this is running in the background, and there's nothing wrong with the fact that most people are going to stay there in that mode of seeking an external party to save them. The only thing that's really wrong with that is the fact that when the external parties are not trustworthy anymore,
right, and
then you're not in a good situation.
right, and this is rampant.
Rampant. Yep. Yes. So that's the first thing, is to start to discover the scripting that's back there, and that's one of the scripts is that something somewhere is the seeker that needs to find, and it can become frantic, and it just feeds the complex.
It can become an addictive activity too.
It's an addictive activity.
I want to get out of my pain. I want to get out of my pain. Let me go here or there, or, you know.
Yes. And so the way to start to break this down is to force yourself to allow yourself to remain in discomfort without fighting it, without thinking about, oh yeah, I need to research that, or I need to, oh yeah, my appointment in 2 weeks, or this, whatever new technique or whatever it is. Or alternatively, just thinking, oh, how bad this sucks. Allow yourself to be in discomfort without all of this supportive scripting, and just allow the discomfort to be. And as much as you can do that, you're going to open up space for epiphanies to show up, for deeper parts of your structure to start to communicate with you. And you're going to deprive the mind virus, or the complex behind it, of its attention, because this is what keeps the complex behind. And we're going to talk about the complexes in a minute if that's not clear yet. That's what keeps it going, right? So the first thing is to stop fighting the symptom, stop fighting it, and that's to allow.
Yeah, and that's challenging, very challenging in itself, because if you have a symptom that causes you a lot of pain, that gets into your biological response and your relationship with death, your own death.
There you go, thank you.
Fear.
Yes. Yes.
You're
That's totally what happens. You're totally right.
That fear, your biological fear of death, will start to completely take you over, and you're thinking, if I don't seek, if I allow this discomfort, I'm going to die.
Yeah, if I don't keep striving to find the solution,
I'm going to die.
then I'll die.
Right.
Yeah, you're totally right that's not even part of the complex or the mind virus. That is just a fundamental biological base script that's activated.
Right, but this is like, if you are really experiencing intense physical pain, like I've had vertigo. I go through these cycles of vertigo.
Yeah.
That are pretty severe.
Yeah.
I mean, very severe. But I've faced my own death so many times in my life, having cancer and all these different things, dramas and all this, that if I allow the discomfort to be, and I face my own fear of my own death, and I accept that, that's when it starts to shift, because that's when the psyche opens up. And that's why I'm saying that I'm not saying that accepting discomfort is an easy thing.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah. So once you have gotten past the level of just accepting that your disease, your symptom, could be psychosomatic, then going to the next part of this and going, okay, well, I'm just going to stop fighting it and allow this space to open up. That's hard too. You can see people start peeling off this program. This
fear is so deeply ingrained into a human system that when you have discomfort, the first thing that a human does is try to get away from the discomfort.
Yeah, this is natural.
Because, so it is kind of going against your natural biological impulse.
It is, yeah,
to
good
survive.
Point. Good point.
But I do feel strongly that this is an incredibly important, it's incredibly important to get to the next stage of your own psychospiritual, physical development by doing this. And if you do have a discomfort and you do start to feel that fear coming up, and you start getting anxiety and you want to get out of it and it's so painful, if you consciously surrender to it, consciously, and say, okay, if this is my time, I'm going to accept it.
There you go.
If you do that consciously, you will have epiphanies. You'll start to see yourself more clearly, and your overall physical and psychic and emotional system will start to I would say transmute it, but
you'll definitely knock a hole in the complex.
Yeah.
So the next thing is that you don't want to identify with your symptoms. Let's say back pain, that's where John Sarno got started with the whole thing, is with back pain, but any kind of symptom, fibromyalgia or chronic, any of these syndromes, this syndrome or that syndrome, or I'm hearing a lot of Lyme disease or mold, or there's 1,000 new symptoms and syndromes, and the medical establishment creates a new name for all of them, and they have thousands now I remember when they released the potential side effects for the vaccine, for the C-19 vaccine. There was like 12 or 1,300 listed possible side effects, and most of those were fake diseases. Those were diseases that had been created over years of basically people having symptoms, and multiple people have some similar symptom, and it doesn't quite fit in the box of other symptoms that were already on the books. And so they would create a new name and say, this is a new disease. Right. This is a new syndrome. We've had 500 people around the world have said, they've had this kind of symptom in this kind of situation. We've located a new disease. And most of these are psychosomatic. And so, but the doctor, the medical industry, whoever's trying to sell you a protocol or a cure or a drug for treating it, a treatment or a surgery, whatever they're trying to sell, they'll give you the name for what it is that you're suffering from. And then you might identify with the symptom. You'll say, oh, now I know what it is that I have. Fibromyalgia.
A big one.
I
these
have
days.
this rare blood disease.
Lyme disease is a big one these days.
I have Lyme disease. Right. How did I get it? Well, I was out in the woods or whatever, and ticks carry it, and I must have got it. I don't know. I didn't find the tick and take it in for testing. I just assume. The doctor asked me, well, have you been camping lately? And actually, I did go camping 6 months ago. Well, that's probably where you picked it up. You have Lyme disease.
They probably test you for some chemical in your body.
They test you for some chemical in your body, and it's present. What's making the chemical present? And so, but here's the fact, is that what you'll find is that people who have Lyme disease heard about Lyme disease before from other people who claim to have Lyme disease. And this isn't to say that there isn't actually a Lyme disease. There actually may be some kind of a toxin that is carried in ticks, and that it can affect you. And it's not to say that it doesn't exist, but it is to say that most people who are going camping are not getting Lyme disease, right? Why?
And even if you did, the body
should just work it out.
Is such a miraculous instrument.
Right.
That if you didn't have an underlying weakness in
right.
your own mind-body system,
that's where it caught you.
Then the body
right.
would be able to work
right.
through it.
That was your blind spot where the parasite got in.
But if
the mind virus got in.
A few people that I've heard getting Lyme disease were very go-getter types, very kind of successful, non-stop kind. And same with, what was that other one a few years ago? The immune one, where people would get like flu. They called it the yuppie disease.
The yuppie disease.
Yeah, it was chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah, chronic fatigue syndrome. That's psychosomatic.
That was a big one a few years back.
Yeah. We know someone who beat that basically through this understanding.
All the people that were susceptible to that were a certain kind of a personality type. And I've seen it also with the Lyme disease, where they're very ambitious. Mm-hmm. They're overworking.
Yes.
They're not taking care of the rest of their lives.
Right.
Maybe they're
Right.
relationships aren't going so great.
Yeah.
They've just been
Right.
primarily focused on this ambition, their ego.
And then this thing hits, and they're forced into their bed, and they can't.
then,
and that, yeah.
but
right.
then the other side flips on, and then they become identified.
Somebody says, "Oh, you have
I have
CFS."
this. So that gives me an excuse to take care of myself and slow down.
Right.
Because now
Right.
I have this disease. But the problem is that a lot of people, that disease, quote unquote, or say you get diagnosed with cancer like I did, is so many people say, I'm a cancer survivor, and they become identified, and then they go onto these groups and they find other people who are cancer survivors, and then their whole lives are around, oh, I had my chemo, or I had my
and then that just becomes a complex that feeds into other people taking cancer for real. Right now, there's all these cancer survivors, and so now there's cancer nonprofits, and then there's the quest to cure cancer, end cancer, and the whole thing becomes a gigantic idea complex. Yeah, parasitic, and then everyone's testing their bumps and going, does it have cancer? And then somebody's saying, oh my God, my bump has cancer, and then and all of this, and then it just feeds into it, and you accept it, and then the body responds as though it's real. It becomes a psychosomatic complex. So the chronic fatigue syndrome, or do you remember the we've talked about all this so many times, the carpal tunnel syndrome.
Carpal tunnel, yeah. Everybody
that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Not every, but 1 out of 5 cashiers at the grocery store, wherever you went in the United States.
Or people who worked with
secretaries or people programmers. Yeah, anybody that was doing this was, oh, I'm getting my surgery, or oh, my arm hurts, my wrist hurts, and they're wearing a brace and all of this. Where's that now? No one has that anymore. It's just gone.
Well, you don't hear it.
It was a meme.
About, but yeah, it was a meme, just like all these.
These are idea complexes. These are cultural complexes that people identify with, and then and they do it through unconscious reasons, weaknesses, right? Like she was explaining, somebody's very ambitious and they're going in this direction, and that's causing an imbalance in life. And so that's a weakness, and then the virus or the complex becomes an excuse to go the other direction. And it would be much more helpful if you were to just get an epiphany or a dream in the middle of the night that showed you how that your path is unbalanced and how that you would be better off in another path. That would be so much better than becoming addicted to some destructive mind virus, which serves as a way to block you. And so I can't necessarily say that the mind virus is some kind of a function to bring you back into equilibrium, because it doesn't. It just puts you into a new state of disease.
Well, it can be a trigger for, I think it is a natural way, any kind of virus is nature's way of forcing a system to get stronger and to evolve itself, or it will die, right?
Yep.
So I do think that all of these things are opportunities, right?
Right.
If this person with Lyme disease or chronic fatigue syndrome or whatever, instead of becoming identified with the disease, if they said, wait a minute, what have I been doing in my life? And really started to sit down and think about why, where,
because the disease gives them an opportunity to be introspective, right?
Right.
But often we don't take that opportunity and we just go on a seeking quest.
Right.
And we don't say, hey, wait a minute, this is showing up to show me where I'm imbalanced, let me use this opportunity to go on an inner quest. And if you do that, which is what we're suggesting, then you'll get to the deeper scripting that was behind, that made you susceptible in the first place.
Because if you start to identify with this symptom and you do take the way that a majority of the population do, and you start to search and you have your doctors, you'll never fully understand. You'll stop your own growth, right? You will stop your own natural evolutionary growth.
Yeah.
And if
that disease will not become a potential initiation to a second stage
right.
of development, which it could if you would allow it to.
No, and then when you identify with the symptom or the disease, it starts to calcinate, become the story in your mind-body system, the cells, and your own cells, your own system will take on that story and become
right.
the symptom, become the disease.
It's sort of like you have the actual, whatever it is, psychic and physiological complex, which is orienting you to respond as though the disease is real, right? I have this disease, I therefore need these meds, I therefore need these appointments, I therefore can't do these things that I used to do in life. My whole life and behavior and mindset is oriented around the disease. That's the complex. And then you have all this supporting scripting to keep the complex alive. In the same way that you have the military-industrial complex. And it'll tell you, but they have nukes over there, the Russians and the Chinese, and we have to do these things. We have to have a CIA spying. We have to have all these covert operations and all this because it's a scary world out there. And so there's all this scripting to keep the behavior going and to keep the complex alive.
Yes.
The complex in the self is the same as the complex in the society.
The medical industrial system, if you don't take responsibility for the symptom and the disease yourself, you will be taken advantage of seriously by the medical industrial complex, just like we are with the military industrial
And in the
complex.
personal state, in the personal self, you will have in the same way that in the culture you have all of the experts writing articles in such and such newspapers and magazines about why we have to do these things and why we have to go to war and why we have to send billions of dollars to the FBI and the CIA and the blah, 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 and all this stuff. Well, you will in yourself have similar scripting running saying, oh, why I have to go to the doctor and why I have to keep taking these meds and why I have to stay away from the sun because it's my skin and why this and why. You'll have all this same kind of fake news going on inside here that's keeping the complex alive. So you can't identify with it. You want to stop focusing on the symptom. You want to stop feeding it with inner scripting and giving it reasons for being. You want to stop reading about how bad your symptom is and all this kind of thing, and reading about Lyme disease and being on Lyme disease support groups or fibromyalgia support groups or carpal tunnel disease support groups or whatever the hell it is. And you don't want to fill out forms at the doctor and check boxes that say, yes, I have fibromyalgia, or yes, I have back problems, or whatever. You don't want to identify. So you want to basically stop feeding it that way. And then, and so...
the complexes, is
So
Oh,
when I
placebo.
like to be as accurate as I can with the terminology, and I think everybody that would hear this would be, understanding from the context when we say the complex, the mind virus, or whatever it is. And I'm trying to be as descriptive as possible. But basically, a complex is, well, there's two ways of this. This is Jungian psychology, and there's two ways of thinking about a complex. A complex can be thought of as an organ of the mind. And it's just there as just, it's an organ of the mind, an organ of the psyche. But then there's also the pejorative or negative connotation around the term complex. And basically it means an autonomous complex. It means some kind of a system that is formed in the psyche, which is doing its own thing and is not wanted. And it's basically like a little, if you go out, if I use some external analogies from the culture, you could say it's like a little mafia, you could say it's like a little cult, you could say it's a little operation that's going on, which is split off from the community of the psyche and is doing its own thing, and it's trying to get its own needs met in its own underhanded ways, in the same way that some kind of a gang or something would be, or maybe again back to CIA, they're running drugs and guns back and forth between different countries to fund themselves. They're sort of a split off autonomous complex. And well, the same thing is going on in the psyche, and an autonomous complex will form around a weakness, like we've said. Mm-hmm. So this can be a genetic, epigenetic propensity that you inherited, or it could be based on where there was some kind of a trauma or a fracture in your own life, or some kind of a developmental trauma or developmental problem where you got stuck in childhood. And it will be in that place where you have a wound or some kind of a fracture where you could, if conditions are right, develop a complex. And then the complex will orient you in a way that is self-destructive. And then the complex will seek more affirmation for itself. And so it will insinuate messages into your conscious mind.
Or your body.
Or your body.
It
will try to get you to react and exactly, thank you. It will give you a couple things. It will give you a physical symptom to validate its existence and make you go, oh, I have this physical symptom, and now I need to act in these certain ways that feed the complex, just like in the red-pilled world, problem, reaction, solution. It creates the problem. It makes you react in a way that feeds the complex. So it'll either do that physically, or it'll do it mentally, or both, by insinuating ideas into your mind of what you need, or this person doesn't like me and therefore blah, blah, blah. And it will do it mentally, or it will do it emotionally. It will, in various ways, stimulate you from the inside in ways that make you feed and give this little complex more energy. So that's what a complex is, and it'll try to run your system, and it'll take turns with other complexes or with other things that you have to do in life, which take priority over the complex.
Yeah, and
it'll step in whenever it can.
Yeah, and what you'll notice about the complexes, so if you allow the discomfort and you don't identify with the symptom, that's when you're going to get in touch with the deeper complex, which is running the show, which is split off from your big S self. It's split off, blocked, energetic system. It's feeding on where you're weak.
Yep.
Now, if you do those things and then you start to communicate more with the complex itself, you start to get to know this complex. At first, you will notice that it cycles a lot
Right.
of times.
Oh, yeah, yeah. This is where it's chronic. This
Yeah,
is
a certain back pain or headaches.
vertigo, whatever you were talking about. Yeah.
It will start to cycle. You start to ask questions
Right.
about it, like, what is going on in my life externally
Right.
that may have caused this
Right.
symptom
That's
to
right.
start to activate itself once again.
Right.
John Sarno says in the mind body
Making the list?
yeah,
I don't know if Sarno came up with that or if I did. I think I might have done that.
Okay.
But it's based on his logic.
So, what if you make a list of everything that's going on in your life, and then this is like just a number, kind of a upper level. You make a list, and then everything that you haven't done that you need to do that
Right.
you've been blocking or whatever.
Yeah, all your little unconscious stresses.
You put that
conscious
on
and
a
unconscious
list,
stresses.
and then you just start to work on and check off different things on the list that you can control, right?
Yeah,
That
so you write a list of all the 25 or 30 things that are pissing you off or
Right.
stressing you out or that you're thinking about in the future that are coming, or that I can't pay this bill, or my mother-in-law is coming for a visit, or whatever it is, or I'm going to have to move at some point or change careers, or all the things that are where, I'm going to have to homeschool my child, or am I going to find a new school, or all these things that make you stressed out, angry, or otherwise disturbed that you are dealing with, or you're going to have to deal with. Write down that list and let it be as long a list as you can possibly make it. Then go through the list and make it, even put the minor stuff on there. Like, I have to go to the dump. I got a bunch of stuff in the backyard that needs to be taken to the dump, or whatever, just all that. Then you go, like you said, you go through the list and you check off and do the minor things that can be done now. There's nothing you can do about your mother-in-law, but there is something you can do about going to the dump. Or there is something, or maybe you can't pay this bill, but you can pay this bill. Whatever it is, you do the things that you can do and scratch those things off the list. And then that will lower your stress overload, right? And so then watch and see if your symptoms intensity
sometimes
lowers.
for some people that will.
That's right. For people who have some people have a pretty robust psychic immune system, and they are not prone to getting symptoms. There are a lot of people that are like this, especially people who are more extroverted. They're not as prone to as people who score lower in neuroticism. People who score, this is to the big 5 personality traits, but people who score higher in neuroticism are more often getting these symptoms. So some people don't get them, but what will happen is they will take on some kind of a symptom at some point because there's something big in the background, and a divorce that's coming, or something big, or career change. And that's when they'll develop their back problems, or whatever the symptom is, or whatever. So for those people, or maybe it's just something small, like they have a job interview, and then for the last week they've been getting headaches, or whatever it is. For those people, just simply accepting this scenario that their symptom is psychosomatic and doing the list and scratching off the things off the list, that can just get rid of the symptom. And it may never come back, and it might be years before they develop any other kind of a symptom. That's some people. Other people who are more prone to this, which is a lot of people now, and people who have already been dealing with this for a long time, for them, that's going to be, this method of the list is going to be part of your program, but not the whole thing.
It's part of it. It's just the outer layer. But if you do start to make that list, you'll start to notice things. You can also ask yourself, when was the last time I had this symptom? What was going on in my life?
Right.
And then you can start to notice how a symptom is cycles. It operates in a cycle.
Right, and it's autonomous often. It's not an exact cycle because it's working its way around other complexes in your psyche.
And if you have any sort of trauma, PTSD, epigenetic trauma,
difficult childhood,
all that,
yeah,
then through this experiment on yourself of starting to do this, you will start to notice the trauma.
right,
You'll start getting dreams that will start to reveal the deeper trauma that's trying to move through your psyche and heal itself.
This is where your practice will just move into general shadow work.
Right.
Where you're just generally trying to become more aware of your inner scripting. You're generally becoming more aware of your destructive thoughts and behavior. You're generally trying to link things back to your childhood and try to go, okay, where might I have picked this up? How long? And try to look at yourself objectively. You're generally looking at your dreams. You're generally studying this, and back to Jungian psychology, just a whole Jungian worldview. You might be interested in that whole way of looking at yourself and the world. You're generally looking for synchronicities in the external world to give you information, and you're just generally doing an inspection and an archaeological dig, and you're generally going down to get to the roots of what's going on. And that intention to do that is really just what you need to do, is just have that intention to allow whatever's behind your disease or symptom to start to show itself. And then of course you must at some point, if you're taking treatments for it, and this is what I'm about to say will not apply to everybody who is. We're already at a stage of advancement in this program to where most people have already fallen off. Most people have not made the decision that, yes, my disease is psychosomatic. They have not started to go work on it and write a list and start to lower their stress threshold. They have not taken on the project of investigating their own inner scripting and their destructive scripting and their destructive childhood and tracing it back to their family and all of that. They're not doing that.
They're not understanding and starting to have a relationship with their own death.
They're not understanding and having a relationship with their own death. They're not accepting the fact that this inner scripting is a psychic mind virus which they picked up from the culture. They're not accepting any of this stuff. So they're not at the place where they can start to stop taking their meds, stop going to the doctor, stop taking all those treatments, don't do those surgeries. That's where you go next. And Sarno says this in his books. You can't take treatments if you think that your carpal tunnel syndrome is caused by going like this on the keyboard, which you've been doing for 20-something years and never had a problem. If you think, and that people have been doing for thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, people doing this and women making baskets and all of that.
Weaving.
And if you can't accept, if you still think that your carpal tunnel syndrome is something physical caused by going like this on the typewriter, well then you're going to go get the surgery. But if you recognize that this is a mind virus that you picked up from the culture and it's feeding on a weakness, and that it's grown into a complex, well, then you don't need that surgery. That's not where the remedy is. And you'll notice that people that get the carpal tunnel syndrome, they are better, but then something else shows up somewhere else in the body a year or two later or months later. So anyway, that's the next step, is to stop treating your symptom as though it has a physical reality. You
Right.
can't go down this program of accepting that your disease is psychosomatic and then treating it as though it's a physical problem. That's just feeding the complex. That's just a split thing. You can't do that.
And then for some that are already on the path, say, and you've moved on from the regular medical industrial complex to the alternative medicine world, you can get attached to that too, but it's not getting to the root of the symptoms. So you have to be very careful about
alternative treatments.
Yeah.
Well, and this is also not to say, hey, wait, I used to be eating McDonald's all the time and abusing my
Right.
body and drinking all the time and taking such and such drugs recreationally, and now I've developed this symptom. But it's just in the mind, and I'll keep snorting cocaine and drinking whiskey and eating McDonald's.
Right.
Right? So that's not to say that some kind of alternative health program is not in order.
Well,
of course. So we sort of skipped over this.
Yeah, that's number one.
That's
If
sort
you're
of
not-
before, that's number 0.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to take steps to lead a clean, healthy outer life, exercising regularly, eating.
We didn't even talk about that, which is a major.
Eating clean food. Well,
Yeah.
because there's so many people out there giving that information. It's
Yeah.
everywhere.
That's actually the first thing, is when you start to become self-aware like
yeah,
this, is that
most people will start there.
it starts with the body. It starts with my health, my
Right.
exercise, my diet. Yes, of course it starts there. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
We sort of just assumed that the
Well,
audience is already there.
Yeah, because, but I guess for some people, maybe they're starting to work on their psyche, and part of their complex is not taking care of their body.
Yeah, no, so I can totally see the fact
Yeah.
how you could make a lot of progress working on yourself psychologically before you really put in the work to clean up your diet and all that.
Maybe that's part of your complex,
Yeah.
say with like obesity.
Right.
I mean, most people who are obese know they're eating bad food
Right.
and too much of it, but the complex itself is running and has become autonomous.
Right.
And so it will not allow the person to stay on any kind of a program. So
Right.
I could see how you might want to do
Or you are on the
both.
program and you do cut down all this stuff and you're down to a pretty normal amount of calories, but you still can't lose the weight. That's because your whole hormonal system, your whole endocrine system and all that has been oriented in this other way. And now the complex is actually so much part of your physiology that even changing the diet doesn't give you the results that it would for somebody else that doesn't have this kind of a complex. And so
Right.
that's when you have to stay with it and start moving, keep on with the physical diet and exercise and stay with it, and then start going into the psychological side of it.
Right.
And don't worry about the body part. It will come into.
I think it's working on both. But the whole thing is that when you start on this process, we said accept discomfort, but I think even to that, you have to be willing to take complete self-responsibility over your life and
Right.
your body and your mind,
Yes.
and how you respond to your inner world and outer world.
So let's say you're doing all these things. Say you're at this level. and you're still experiencing your symptom, well, what'll probably happen first is you'll start to get breaks in the symptoms, in its hold on you. And so you will notice that at some point, maybe something was ongoing, and there was some symptom that was getting you pretty much 24 hours a day, and then you notice that for a day or two or something you were free of the symptom, or for some hours you were free of the symptom. Once you get that break that, wow, I actually expected to feel such and such pain or discomfort, but for whatever reason it wasn't there, or I went on vacation and for the first 2 days of the vacation I didn't have my symptom, and then it started to come back. That is a blessing, because that shows you that your symptom is psychological, psychosomatic.
Well,
because nothing changed physically.
The other thing that you'll notice is that you will be able to become more outside of the physical discomfort.
Above it.
When you're not identifying with it, there's layers to that. It comes to the point that you can be in severe discomfort and still be able to operate in the world, and no one will ever know that you have this discomfort.
Oh yeah.
And you can...
I have symptoms no one knows about. I mean, except you.
And the other thing is that you will have the capacity to go into your own body system somatically and relax into the discomfort, and by allowing the discomfort, the pain, it relaxes it and it opens up.
Right.
And it's an actual healing method. It's kind of like self-acupuncture. So
you can also do meditation practices of different kinds, and yoga and other somatic practices. I do the open focus meditation by Les Fehmi, Lesfehmi, open focus meditation. And if you are working on yourself physically and psychologically, if you are working to bring balance into your life, if you are studying your dreams and whatever information is coming from the inside and outside, and working to stay on your path, and if you are suffering from symptoms and they are still not going away after a while, then this is sort of Jung's definition of neuroticism, and that is being one-sided. In other words, your orientation in the world is imbalanced. Your orientation in the world needs to become more holistic, and you haven't found a way to bring that unlived orientation, that shadow material, or that let's not say shadow material, that undeveloped side of yourself has not come into full use. And so it is, there is a natural imbalance in the psyche that is sort of walled off the flow. And it is on one side of this wall where you're getting the complex is still back there. And if you could take down the wall, then everything would have to start flowing again, and the complex would not be able to survive over there behind that wall anymore.
But in order to take down the wall, it seems to me that it's a process, and it's this everyday work that you do.
Yep.
I was also going to mention that when you start to know your complexes, you start to see them as like these little children.
Yep.
They're simple life forms, and they're asking for our attention.
They are.
And a relationship.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I think it's good to have examples. There's an infant, when my psychosomatic physical issues came online was when I was an infant, getting pneumonia and being put into the hospital, and it goes along with the abandoned child program, which is epigenetic in both sides of my family. So when I start to get a relationship with that complex, which was causing me this cyclical sickness victim archetype on and off throughout my life, I start to work with this. I see it, visualize it as this infant, and I've been able to find certain things I can do somatically to move and take care of that broken off complex or child or infant. So like one of the things I do is just hold up my knees and I rock and I hold and I visualize myself as the mother of this little infant, of just holding the infant, rocking, and I can feel somatically in my body, my heart chakra opening up and just the energy moving.
Mm-hmm.
So these are things that you can find
Yeah.
in your process, that you're actually creating a relationship with these broken off parts. You're giving them what they didn't get. And the reason why they're acting out is because they've been severely traumatized in some way. So you're giving them, finding out what it is that they're asking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this makes me kind of want to analyze the understanding of the complex or the source of the disease.
Instinct, it gets down right.
As a split off part of yourself, which is just a wounded part, and then contrast that with the idea that it's an autonomous complex or parasite, and it's almost like both are true.
Mm-hmm.
It's like both are true. It's a split off part that you could call it an infant part, or a split off part that is part of you, but then it's become possessed, basically. It's become put to bad use. And in the same way that a gang forms in a community, it's a split off little community that's getting its own needs met through covert, illicit, criminal behavior. But it is, these people are the sons of our community members.
Yeah, it's, you said it in Shadow Tech, I believe, or in other talks, an organic ecosystem.
Yeah, the complex is an organic ecosystem. It's a micro ecosystem that is both part of us and needs to be integrated back into us, but it has also been repurposed towards something parasitic. And so it's not fundamentally evil, but it's got bad behavior going on. Mm-hmm. So people might ask, okay, so what is your success with this program, this protocol, this understanding? And I would just say, honestly, I have, like, for example, right now, one of the symptoms that I'm dealing with is this scratchy skin syndrome, and I've noticed that it's connected into my neck, and tension in my neck and my jaw and all of this, and it comes on and goes up and down during the day. And that some elements of this symptom have been going on for 15 years, but it has now worked its way up to be very obvious. I didn't notice any neck tension before. It's also in the breathing and shallow breathing and all of this. This is sort of one of the big, long-lasting symptoms that I've had, that I've been working on for a long time. But that one, but before that, and also concurrently, I will have other symptoms which will come on, which will be back pain, which will be, I mean, I've had the weirdest kind. I mean, she's got all kinds of symptoms. My foot, part of my foot fell asleep for a couple of months, or different kinds of joint pains, or some people get colds a lot. But I haven't really had that, although I think I have had some colds as a symptom. What are some of my other symptoms that I've had?
The ones that the shoulder pain.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Shoulder pain right here was chronic for me. That's how I actually woke up to this whole thing. John Sarno calls this TMS, tension myositis syndrome. I don't use the term. I use the term, but I don't like to, because I just need to expand it out to be more broad. But yeah, I awakened to all of this with chronic shoulder pain. I recently remember I got attacked in my side and my back right here. And for about 3 days, I had an immense
you have a
muscle tension
right
in this one little muscle in my back. And that just attacked me. And these symptoms like this, especially muscle pains, they can just come on instantly, and they have a life of their own. And so and same goes for you, right? What are some of your symptoms that have come and gone
definitely.
Well, you've got this vertigo one that's been going on.
Yeah, the vertigo one, and I noticed that this one came on right before a show, which a
live performance that you're about to do. Yeah, and it makes sense.
But then I realized that through this, I've had the vertigo on and off, but I noticed this time around that I got in touch with a PTSD response to it, figuring out that this is caused by a fear of, it's from trauma in my creative world, and being that every time that I've gotten into a state of a certain kind of success in my music career, something extreme happened, like my partner was beating me up, or
things like where the performance is canceled, and like, remember you went and had that thing in New Mexico? And then they turned off the lights on the first song. You're playing for this festival, and you put all this work into it, and you're finally on stage, and then the power goes off. It's like there's a part of you that's expecting that as you go forward, as you become more successful, that there will be some kind of a slice that will come in and knock you out. That's an old trauma repeating pattern, and then you get I won't call it TMS. You get symptoms around that.
I see it now as a PTSD of it's very rooted into the instinct itself of being destroyed, being murdered, being eliminated,
right?
And it's created this complex that wants to interject. To basically, the complex is wanting to protect me. There's a system that isn't aware, it's just wanting to protect me from getting murdered, from getting eliminated, right? Fear of death again. So again, how I deal with this is I go directly into the death, into my own relationship
with death.
With my own what is my relationship with death, my own fear of death. And so I go back into that again. So every time I have any kind of a physical symptom, I'm always trying to get to the root of it in the bigger context of the story and not putting my mind on the symptom. I'm putting my mind on the overall story.
That's right. The scripting that's feeding the symptom, that's a part of it, yeah.
Right. And then as far as going through the symptom itself, I basically just ignore it.
And then you just ignore the symptom.
I don't put any
don't put attention on it.
On
as
the
little
symptom
attention as you can.
As I can.
Right. That's it.
I don't let it keep me from, like, I have vertigo or whatever. I still, in my yoga practice, will do a back bend, even though, though I'm going to have
you just
a
move
dizzy.
through it.
I just
whatever
keep
it is,
doing
like
whatever I do.
You go for a walk every day around the neighborhood or whatever, and then suddenly your right foot is hurting, and you're like, "What is this?" And you step down on it, you're like, "Oh, that hurts. I don't think I'm going to be able to go for a walk today." No, you just walk it out.
Right.
You just do it. You just behave as though the symptom wasn't there. You don't give it any credence.
Right.
And then if you don't give it any credence, if you don't treat it as though it's real, if you don't go to the doctor for it and try to take meds for it or anything like that, or try to drink or drug it away, and you just allow it to be, and you do the investigation, and you make the list, and you look for the stresses that are behind it, and you deepen your inner investigative work, the symptom will shift. It will move on to the next thing, and or just dissipate away if you don't give it any attention. And then finally, if you have to live with continual, chronic, but minor symptoms that don't ruin your life, but they annoy you, well, welcome to the real world.
Yeah,
Right? It's just part of the deal. It's life is suffering.
Yeah.
It's part of the deal of being a human in this body. And if you're getting physiological, psychological, or physical symptoms, and this other guy over here isn't, you're seeing this guy or gal is successful and they're not getting symptoms, why I should be able to not get symptoms? Well, they're suffering in another way.
Right.
Not everybody suffers in the physical way. They get caught up in all kinds of drama in the external world, and that's caused by complexes too. It's just some people are susceptible to the punishment of these complexes through physical ailments and symptoms, and other people get other situations in life that their unconscious brings them into, and they suffer in every way. Everyone's suffering. So that's just part of the deal. Well, Scott, Scott just got on, and we were just about to, no one was on Zoom, we were just about to close out. But I think that will be the end of the dissertation, and then we can talk to you and see what's going on for a few minutes.
Yeah.
We've been going on.
Yeah, we just about to end, actually.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I had a session, so I.
Oh yeah, you're busy. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. You got your doggy there?
Yeah.
What's your
really
dog's?
cute.
What's her name?
Her name's Elke. It's kind of a Germanish name.
Oh, Elke?
Elke.
Elke. ELKE?
Oh,
Yeah.
Elke.
somebody on Facebook wrote a nice note.
Okay.
Justin Townley says, I don't know how much you believe in fate and destiny in a mystical sense, but I just recently came across your Shadow Tech Alchemy channel, and everything that you guys have been discussing resonates with me very deeply. I appreciate your rational approach and profound wisdom. I just want to say that I'm a big fan of the work you are doing, and you are greatly appreciated.
That's great. Who was it that Justin?
Justin.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you very much. And we totally believe.
Oh, Fate and Destiny.
Fate and
Michael
Destiny.
Mead.
Yeah.
is a great author and lecturer on that subject.
And we do.
Do you know Michael Mead, Scott?
No, the name rings a bell, but no.
Oh, it's fantastic. You can put in Michael Mead, Fate and Destiny into YouTube or something. Meade, Michael Mead. He's a fantastic Jungian, inspirational speaker and author. He's getting up there now, but he's fantastic.
Yeah, so Justin, you're welcome anytime to join the Zoom call, and then we can connect live with you.
Yep, you can come into the Zoom call. Just go to the events page at shadowtechalchemy.com, or you can type questions in Facebook, however you want to do it.
Yeah, and that's great. I'm glad you're getting some info for yourself out of that.
Yeah.
So we appreciate it. So there's no, and Marina said, yes, thank you both. I truly believe humanity will learn in coming years to be their own healers. And I believe that too.
We agree with you completely. The only part where we're a little hesitant is that humanity evolves a lot slower than we would like.
Right.
Over many, 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 many lifetimes. And what I'm seeing is that I trying to be as, all the stuff that we talk about, it's not even really that difficult, really. And it's kind of like saying, you know how most of humanity can maybe do basic mathematics, but they can't do algebra? Well, somebody who's, has some algebra skills can look at it and go, you know what? Level 1 algebra is not that difficult. You show that to the average person on the street, they'll think it's difficult, but if they just put their mind to it for a few months, it's not that difficult. It's really pretty basic. Well, it's the same thing with all the stuff that we're talking about. No, most people don't work on the stuff that we're talking about, and they would consider it advanced. But from my perspective, it's just at that basic algebra level, and anyone can come up, not anyone can come up to this level, but a lot of people can come up to this level if they would decide to do so.
It's just day by day, chop wood, carry water, repeat.
It's just an intention to do this. And it turns out that, this has always been the case, the people who develop themselves psychologically are often people who have problems, the most problems. It's sort of a combination of people who have intelligence and introspective capacities and problems that they need to work on. You put those two together and you get people who advance psychospiritually. And there's a lot of people that have both of those. They have introspective capacity, they have intelligence, and they have trauma, they have problems, and they can put it together. But and I cannot blame the external world and all of the parasitic actors in the world for why they're not putting two and two together and finding the sources of information that are available to them and doing the work, because in Jungian terms, the self will basically direct you in that direction. And so if you don't see a lot of people going in this direction of consciously evolving themselves, there's nobody to blame for it. It's just to say that's where we are in our development. We're just not, that's where we are. It's where we are. So, come back in 1,000 years. Why not just come back in 1,000 years and see what it's like? I mean, I don't know if you can or not, but that's what I'm kind of suggesting. Just give it 1,000 years, and then.
I would say that I see the potential of a lot of people these days who are more open and who have been, quote unquote, initiated to the dark side of humanity.
Oh,
and
red
so,
pills, yeah.
Yeah, so they do have the ability to go to the next layer of this, which is the internal investigation into your own psyche. And so I do see that this is another cycle that perhaps, we might not see it, but there will be another renaissance.
There might be a little one, kind of like
Yeah.
how after the 60s, by the time you got into about the 70s, the Jungian viewpoint was actually making it into the culture. And then you had a lot of people going into therapy in the 70s, and then you had the Jungian men's movement in the 80s and 90s. And so there was a movement of that material, but then it went back down again. And so I do see a minor movement or renaissance of psychospiritual gnosis coming in. But I think right now we're on the come down from all of the New Agers, right? And all the gurus and people who were, and The Secret and all this kind of stuff. And it was that whole thing has crashed. And
Right.
because, and after, I think actually 2012, really, what do you think, Scott? 2012 really put the nail in the New Age movement, because a lot of people had signed on to thinking that there was going to be a renaissance at that point. And that didn't happen at all.
No,
It did for us, though.
It went into the dark night
It went into the dark night of the soul.
for
Which we're still in.
civilization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of gurus and people, I like the way Ram Dass did things, but most gurus have kind of been, the guru thing isn't working anymore, and there's been a lot of sub-movements that have kind of crashed. And so what it's kind of coming down to is, you have to do the shadow work, you have to do the real work, you have to do the chop wood, carry water, you have to do the substantive hard work yourself. There's no guru or whatever, or some cool new method that's gonna fix you. And I think that basically that whole movement has not come to terms with that yet. So they're in a little dark night. But yeah, so if enough people can start to basically get excited about the fact that, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to wait or search for some new method. I don't have to hope. I don't have to have faith in some 2012 thing. I don't have to wait for the New Age or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's right here in front of me.
Right.
I have the toolkit. It's right there. Let me pull these books out off the shelf. Let me go use my intuition and do the web searches, and let me start doing the work.
Right.
Because if you're a spiritual person, by now you've come across, and you've been doing this for years, you've come across all kinds of good material, because everybody's saying the same thing.
Right.
You just haven't taken it seriously yet.
Right.
You saw Ram Dass giving you stuff.
Or
you saw,
Yeah, or you've gone on to Mark Passio's.
You saw that. You saw the people who are Eckhart Tolle.
Right.
You saw all that.
Or Gurdjieff.
Or Gurdjieff. You saw Gurdjieff. You read Carl Jung. You saw this stuff. You realized at the time when you read or saw that yeah, this is good wisdom. I should be doing this. But you just kept on moving to the next thing, thinking that I want something easier.
Or you're just distracting yourself from the discomfort of turning the lens on your own inner world versus the external world, or something out there that will give me the secret
Right,
or
the secret.
potion or the
Right.
elixir, the grail,
Yeah,
right?
special method that's
The
gonna.
grail is there, out there, when the grail was always within.
That's your personal wholeness that is in your future if you will do the work.
Well, it's not in the future, it's actually here right now.
It's a potential that can manifest as you do the work.
Yeah, I would just say that that potential is operating in your unconscious right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. That's the whole fractal. That's the archetype of you.
Right.
That's the fractal holographic image of perfection that is in you, and it is only about clarifying that. What Ram Dass says, polishing the mirror.
Right.
What's in the mirror is right there. You are right there. You're just clearing off all of the junk.
Right.
What's going on, Scott?
No, those are issues I've been struggling with myself. Why we, we're seeing what we're seeing as the trends of people willing and actively doing inner work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to gauge because these people don't tend to network that much sometimes.
Right.
And I do agree with what you said about the 2012. That was a blessing in disguise because it sort of killed this tying things to some date or some magic. We hit that in 2000, we hit that in 2012.
Right.
And it sort of untethered people from the old mindset that the world's coming to an end and we're all going to go be in the clouds in some heaven for the rest of eternity, rather than, going to the master. That the teachings of Jesus himself has said heaven, is here with you right now. And he didn't, promise the kind of pie in the sky that the religionists that followed him and claimed to be interpreting him promised. And so I think a lot of the unconscious shadow of humanity sort of got shattered, or in a good way, sort of got processed through that. Maybe the world's going to go on. Maybe eternity is we're going to be in it, maybe. And that's a hard thing it's surprising how hard that is to confront. And I think it may or may not be related to people's lack of confront for the inner work, but because both of them require you to go in and go, oh, wow. So somebody else isn't going to fix it for me. I'm going to have to get in there and, fix up my mind, my reality, my concepts, my shadows, and sort all that out so that I can maybe stand a chance of having a better future, And so I think a lot of that is related. I mean, I don't claim to have answers for why that is, but I do see the same things, and it helps to exchange that information as viewpoints as to arriving at a better understanding of why that is. Because once you understand why that is, you can actually get people through it and get people started on the inner work.
Yeah, they have to, like Jung says, rescind your projections. And your projections are not just the dark shadow stuff that you're projecting onto other people and turning them into demons and enemies, but it's also things like these other archetypal states like utopia, right? That utopia is a projection, just like Armageddon is its equal opposite projection. Right? And so we project Armageddon, we project utopia, we project all kinds of things. And there's, utopia and Armageddon, which are sort of like, utopias could be at high noon and Armageddon's at 6 o'clock. and it's like the top and bottom of the cycle, they're rooted in actual biological reality, because everything happens in cycles. Civilizations, in the climate, the planet, everything's happening in cycles. Our planet is probably flying through different, places in the galaxy where we get bombarded with asteroids, and you have different kinds of catastrophes. And so basically there's an ancient genetic knowledge that there are times when we move into a dark age. There are times when we crash and burn. And we know this from our own personal cycles. There are times when we crash, and then there are times when we ascend to the mountaintops, and there are times when we are at our peak and at our best. Everything's happening in cycles. So Armageddon is sort of a projection of the bottom of the cycle, and Utopia is a projection of the top of the cycle, the golden age. And they're real, but we internalize these natural cycles, and then when we don't accept the present, we tend to become more projective of these things. And when we project Armageddon all the time, then that puts us in prepper mode, and then that gives us a real meaning in life, because we have to prepare, we have to warn the others, we have to, go into this sort of basic mammalian mode of like a little squirrel storing away all our nuts and all of that. And it's a very ancient kind of protective modality, and you can get a lot of endorphins off of that. Or we can project utopia and this kumbaya thing and all of this, and then you can get a lot of love chemicals and a lot of the feelings of the endorphins of community and oxytocin and all these other things. And so when you rescind your projections and you realize that I'm projecting these things, I'm sort of creating this reality out of these projections, it brings you back down to earth, so to speak. And then you have to basically, it brings you to a state where your highs are not as high, but your lows are not as low. And people get a lot of meaning out of getting really high and out of getting really low. So when you have to sort of live a life that doesn't have this kind of dramatic throw going on, and you're back down to earth and you're back in reality, then it's back to what she says, the Zen or whatever it is, the chop wood, carry water mode. And you're just not getting high on projections, and you have to be in the present moment. And that's very difficult for people in our civilization. We're very focused on the future and often the past, and we're not living in the present moment. That's kind of more of an indigenous way of living.
Well, we're also addicted to all the stimulation.
We're addicted to all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible how much stimulation that's around that you can attach to. And that's why getting in nature is so important, to just stop and listen and be silent.
It's very hard to let go of all of your projections and your ambitions.
And just the chemical stimulation.
Chemical stimulation.
That is incredibly addicting.
Of the busy mind.
Busy mind and busy body, like...
It gives us meaning. It makes us feel like
even
we're doing something.
The grasping for that bliss, wanting that high in a blissful spiritual way, can be just as addicting as a chemical to get that bliss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
all kinds of drama. We create all kinds of drama to give us meaning.
Right.
So that we can go through the roller coaster of ups and downs. And then when we're high, we can be high on narcissism. And then when we're low, we can get high on scapegoating and projecting.
Or victimhood.
Or victimhood, right? We can get high on victimhood, or that's really what it is. Right. You're high on narcissism, you're high on victimhood. And our whole culture, our whole civilization, I don't blame our civilization or anything. I see the West as a organic ecosystem that emerged in a period where humanity had to develop, it had to expand, it had to use technology, it had to build the frontal cortex, and it had to start thinking in abstract terms and all the technology. This was a part of our development that was necessary. And it has all these pros and cons to it. But one of the cons is that it's an extremely busy and projective kind of a mindset. And we're now moving into a phase where we're kind of coming down off of that high. And it's very difficult for Westerners to just get back into the moment and just, and we're also, especially Americans, but all Westerners, especially Americans, have become very narcissistic and thinking. I saw this picture of these college students. It was Harvard or Yale, one of the Ivy League colleges. Their graduating class, and they were all wearing their robes, their black robes with their black square, their Saturnalian, Roman Saturnalian symbolism and all of that. But also, they all had these little inflated planet Earths in their hands. And so the whole class was just with 100 and something people or whatever it was, with these little worlds in their hands for a photo shoot. Like the whole world is in your hand. You're a Harvard graduate. The world is yours. And that is so arrogant. And it's like when you're moving into this other mode that we're always talking about, you have to get through that arrogance, that narcissism, and that self-importance, and that persona-driven life, and the degrees and all this kind of stuff. That's just a sheen. That's just a wrapper. That's just superficial. It's fake. And a lot of this whole thing of saving the world or being, of changing the world is just more projection and distraction, and because when it comes, this is what happens to people who have been very ambitious, and they get to a point in their life and they realize that everything that they've done, they see other generations growing up around them, and they see their little way of life and their little niche is getting smaller, and they are going into the background while other generations are coming up around them, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, there's this whole big cycle going on, and I'm already being superseded. And then they start to think, well, what was I was all thinking I was going to change the world, and now I'm seeing the world is just moving on without me. Did I even matter? And you have to come into more of a collective communal sense of you're part of a big, fat, giant thing that is way bigger than you, and you need to allow it to be bigger than you, while at the same time caring about it enough to put your energy into it to help it, without letting that become grandiosity. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah. And that brings to mind, the perspective, because a lot of the teachings have been, well, come to present time, the Eastern teachings, the Eckhart Tolle, present time is all there is, come to present time. And that is very important. that you get on a mindfulness thing. But one of the things that we've lost that you described, I think, in a slightly different way, is that perspective of who you are. You're not somebody who um, is only in present time. There's a perspective, there's a past, there's a tradition, there's all the things that led up to today, and then there's what I do today affects what's going to happen tomorrow. There's, for me, when you do the inner work and really come to present time, then your sense of time begins to expand and include the past and present, the respect for the past, the respect for traditions, the willingness to go back and read what these guys had, as their gems of wisdom and knowledge.
Yes.
And then the willingness to plan for the future, to envision a future.
Yes.
And so I think that's missing from the guru thing. I didn't see much of anything. Mark Passio, to some degree, went into, did not emphasize that be in present time so much as he did the work is going to go on for a long time. And he's talking about the outer work, but he also the inner work.
Right.
So that perspective is where I'm at now in my journey, is that I'm claiming that perspective and trying to live up to it, realizing that I'm as big as I want to take responsibility, for all of that, And,
man.
And what I've learned from inner work, and why I'm still doing the inner work and in the inner work business, let's say, as far as that's mostly, I'm also a part-time teacher, but the inner work is pretty much my existence for the last several years.
Yep.
And the reason I stay on it is because I did come to the realization at some point that having enough time to look back and see that doing the inner work does make these changes that have this value in terms of they really were profound, and they really did lead me away from trouble and disappointment and failure. Not that I have a perfect life, right? Obviously not.
Right.
But that when I look at the glass half empty or the glass half full, I can see so many benefits from having done the inner work. In other words, it was worth the time and the money. It really was. And if I can communicate that to others, that's the one thing I would like to communicate, is why I want people doing the inner work, is that it's worth it. It looks like a lot of investment of time, energy, and money, and it is.
Yeah.
It's worth that, because to get to the point where you can start to envision the future and the past, and like you were pointing out earlier, rather than that slamming square wave of going from from Armageddon to Utopia and back, because and you're not even aware that you were in the other place just a few years ago. Our society is dramatizing that.
Yes.
And when you can come to the perspective where you're riding the sine wave that, there are trends, and that we're a little bit Armageddon right now in our culture and our world after COVID, and looking at the food shortages and everything.
Yeah.
But there is a such thing as a better world and a more peaceful world, and a golden age. And, those things are caused by what we do in present time. And, getting people to do the inner work where they come back up to the level of responsibility that we had, say, in the Iroquois nations, where they're making decisions for 7 generations.
Yeah. Perfect.
And you actually start to make your society and your culture moving along a sine wave, instead of getting slammed back and forth by war and then by religious.
It's a more nurture. Yeah, it's a more nurturative.
Yeah.
But it is First of all, I want to say I like to say Renaissance rather than utopia because it sort of implies a smaller peak rather than sort of the sort of second coming rapture type idea. But it's sort of like move towards a renaissance, because you can have renaissances that come within decades, within a lifetime.
Those periods where you have this luxury to do the art and the science of a true renaissance.
That's right.
And then you have this, it kind of reminds me of the old the Bible story about prepare for your, for the 7 years of famine, and you'll have 7 good years. Use those now, so that you're not only indulging in the Renaissance and celebrating, the freedom, but you're also going, okay, we're going to also do these things, preparing, prepping, that kind of thing, that makes sure we're going to keep it, reasonably livable for the future. And I think that's really relates to what I once realized was probably the purpose of existence, was to kind of to optimize it. And optimizing implies that you're going to have a lot of change, because we all want change and variety, but you're also going to have stability, and you're going to have a good balance of it. So we're talking about, along all the dynamics of life, that's not just a personal or social or society thing. It's probably what the universe is trying itself to accomplish, is a more optimized existence. In terms of,
I think that's excellent. In fact, I think that's a key word. Optimization.
Oh, how would symbiosis?
Yes, well, symbiosis or homeostasis, those are kind of related, but optimization means that basically wherever you are in the cycle, wherever you are in your state of health, or wherever it is, your meaning comes from the task of optimizing your state. Right?
Yes.
If you're in a very bad place, you're optimizing your state. If you're in a very good place, you're optimizing your state. And you get meaning and focus and energy out of that goal of optimization. And everything can be taken into that. You can optimize your inner work, you can optimize your outer work, you can optimize everything.
If you're in a low cycle, then your optimization would be focusing on the inner, on all those areas that we were just talking about that are talking to you, the symptoms, the complexes. You're optimizing the opportunity that you're being given with a symptom.
Yeah, there's always something you can do with that, because when you're looking for healing, I'm looking to be healed, I'm looking to be saved, I'm looking for peace, and all these kind of things. Those are sort of like the square wave you said, that's like slammed to the wall, one side of reality. And optimization is a word that says you're in process. And
it's much like the concept of the middle path. Yeah.
The middle path. It's like the middle path. And it gives you focus, it gives you meaning, it gives you drive, it gives you a projection of what the future could be. Well, the future could be an optimized future of what we have now. Instead of projecting utopia, you're just trying to optimize the current state. So it's a better state, but it's not utopic, which is total projection. Yeah, I like that, Scott. I agree with that completely. I think that's a good word to, when you're talking about inner work, and you're talking about the goals of inner work.
And And something that Melissa was talking about kind of led me to another realization, which is that in the inner work, there's a sort of an optimization process going that allows you to expand your world. Let me explain a little bit. It's like when you have some progress in your inner work and you feel stronger, you feel better, in other words. You had a problem or a
Yeah.
you had a problem or a shadow or a complex plaguing you.
An issue.
You get free from that. It unleashes this energy.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So in unleashing that energy, what working for my clients is that you use, and I borrow this concept from early Hubbard when he of you have more attention and power and energy available to you.
Right.
And you should use that to dive in deeper, because you can only dive in as far as you could afford to confront and process.
Right.
You know, if it was something really dark and heavy, like a loss of a parent at a young age, that kind of a thing, you wouldn't do that in your first inner work session. You might, but begins to really build and lower it, but in a way where you're being slammed back and forth by life. Because I think but when you do the inner work just right and you use the gains that you have to then dive deeper, now and then you free up a bunch of more attention, and you free up things that were trapped in your past. And so that is how I have come to enjoy what I talk about as a more of a capacity for living, is using the ups and downs of your inner work, realizing and build myself up, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, I got you 100%. Even though during this last little spiel that you did right there, your audio cut out about 50% of the time. Your video froze and cut out, and you were coming in and out. So I heard,
Okay.
I understood everything that you said and
Gotcha.
about freeing up energy. But your internet connection is something's going on. Do you know how to check? I just found this out. If you're on Zoom and you go to the zoom.us preferences.
Okay.
And then go to statistics, and it shows you your video and audio bandwidth. Let's see. Let me go to overall. And
wow.
Right. See that? I just found out about this. So if you go over to video, it will say frames per second. Like mine says I'm delivering 13 frames per second in video. All you should look at really is video. And then it says that
okay.
Well, it's showing my resolution going up and down. And I found out recently with Zoom that my resolution is dependent on your resolution, and it's kind of ridiculous, but I can see that I can see the resolution is only 640 by 360, but that's your webcam, that's normal. So anyway, you can take a look at that and maybe figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, I realized I'm not on an internet website Zoom. I'm on some Zoom program integrated with my Linux. So.
Oh, but your Zoom program has its own preferences, right? Your Zoom screen says zoom.us, does it not? On where at the top of the, if you're in, you might be on Linux, but on the top of your screen where you have your file menu and all that, isn't there one for Zoom? Anyway, there's somewhere in there, there's Zoom preferences, and if you can find your Zoom preferences, then you can go to statistics, and under statistics it shows you your bandwidth and stuff, and you can kind of watch it going. But I think, Scott, because we're now into our broadcast by 2 hours and 20 minutes, we were going to try to keep our talks down to 90, but maybe if you have anything else to add, we'll put that in, and then we'll close it out for today. Oh wait, say it again. You're skipping out.
Maybe some internet outage here or something, but no, that was a great discussion again, and I'm going to catch up on the content a little later.
Okay, great, and thank you for joining again.
Oh, of course.
And you're adding some fantastic wisdom to the puzzle. In fact, am I still writing on my same notepad where I had your other suggestions that I regard very highly of.
Yeah, it's very wise.
I'm getting, so thank you. I'm getting a lot from your assistance.
Well, thanks. Equally, I'm getting a lot from your technique and using it and applying it and seeing things in life about it. So great.
It's good. Symbiotic.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. We'll see you in a couple weeks, Scott.
A couple weeks. Bye.
Okay, you're cutting out, but we're going to say bye. Okay, yeah, I see you now. Right. Okay, bye for now. See you soon, Scott. And see everybody else. It's shadowtechalchemy.com, and we'll see you soon.